At 85 years old, I've learned something I wish I had understood much earlier. Life often has to break you before it can lift you. The moments that feel like absolute dead ends are rarely endings at all. They are pauses, pressure points, places where transformation quietly begins. When everything collapses, your plans, your certainty, even your sense of identity, it feels final. But looking back, those moments were life clearing space. What I once called failure was preparation. What felt like loss was an invitation to grow into someone deeper and more honest. And when life does bring you to your knees, the most dangerous mistake is believing that the fall defines everything that comes after. I made that mistake in my late 50s. I lost a business I had spent decades building, and with it, I lost the respect of people whose opinions I thought defined my worth. I looked in the mirror and saw a man I believed had run out of time. That belief quietly stole my peace for years. What I didn't understand then is that failure is not a final map. It's only a moment, one that strips away titles and forces you to meet the man underneath. Once I stopped seeing failure as the end, I began to notice something else. Life was never meant to move in a straight line. It moves in loops, spirals, and sudden detours that feel painful and unnecessary at the time. Most men don't understand this until it hurts. When my career collapsed, I thought I had lost direction. In truth, I had simply been rerouted. Without a title to hide behind, I was forced to meet myself as I truly was. And in that uncomfortable space, I found a freedom I never knew existed. That detour shattered one of the most damaging beliefs I carried for most of my life. The idea that there is a deadline on becoming whole. We are taught rigid timelines, successful by 30, settled by 60, finished soon after. Miss one step and you feel like you failed the entire journey. But at 85, I see life doesn't keep time like a clock. It keeps time like a heart. As long as it's still beating, the story can shift. Some of the most meaningful transformations begin when people believe it's too late. Understanding this led me to another hard truth. Much of my suffering came from trying to control everything. For decades, I believed peace would arrive once I forced life into the shape I wanted. That resistance quietly drained my spirit. The turning point came when I finally surrendered, not in defeat, but in trust. I stopped fighting the current. The journey didn't become perfect, but it became lighter. Sometimes peace isn't something you chase. It's something you allow. Letting go of control opened a quiet space, and that space made room for connection. There was a time when I felt deeply lonely, even while surrounded by people. I assumed my circle was fixed, that at a certain age you had already met everyone who mattered. Then a simple conversation changed everything. I learned that curiosity, not youth, is the real source of vitality. Friendship has no expiration date. One honest hello can become a turning point. Sometimes peace comes from letting someone walk beside you. Of course, connection makes loss inevitable. For a long time, grief convinced me that joy had permanently left my life. But grief is not the opposite of love. It's the price of loving deeply. Love doesn't disappear, it changes form. I began to see those I lost in my patience, my kindness, and the way I showed up for others. Grief softened. It became a teacher instead of a prison. It gave me depth I never expected to carry.
Loss also forced me to confront how deeply I had misunderstood wealth. For most of my life, I believed a true turnaround meant recovering money, status, and the visible symbols of success. When those things disappeared, I felt stripped of value, as if my worth had vanished with them. That misunderstanding quietly shaped many of my choices. But hardship has a way of revealing what success never does. With less in my hands, I began to see more clearly. I learned who stayed when there was nothing to gain. I discovered that real wealth shows up in small, ordinary moments. A simple meal shared with someone who genuinely cares. A quiet conversation without distraction. A feeling of being truly seen. None of that could be bought or displayed. Worth is not something you store in possessions or numbers. It lives in presence, in how you give your time, and in the way you make others feel when you are with them. When I stopped measuring myself by what I owned, something unexpected happened. I no longer felt the need to be loud. For much of my life, I believed relevance came from speaking first, speaking often, and being noticed. The world rewards noise, but noise has a way of drowning out what actually matters. When I finally stepped away from constant opinions, comparisons, and distractions, I was left alone with myself. At first, that silence felt uncomfortable. Then it became familiar, and eventually it became powerful. In stillness, I rediscovered an inner compass I had ignored for years. That quiet voice didn't tell me what I wanted to hear, but it told me what I needed to know. Trusting it didn't make life easier or predictable. It made it calmer. Silence became a source of strength, and self-trust became the steady foundation that guided every turn that followed. And that brings me to the truth I wish I had believed much earlier. It is never too late to begin again. At 85, I can tell you this with certainty. Health can be cared for. Relationships can soften. Forgiveness can still open doors. Consistency matters more than intensity. Pride builds walls, but humility opens doors you thought were permanently closed. Life isn't defined by avoiding detours, it's defined by finding your way back. Change is proof the journey is still alive. If you're breathing, the next chapter is still waiting.